Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 207. Exemption. The Zoage Basin in the snowstorm Sacred Mountain, the source of the Yellow River in Zhugu. It was inaccessible by horses. Hung Jun, Li Jinglong, and Yu Zhou crossed the entire Qinghai and came to the north of Bashu. At the end of this ladder-like plateau, which was like a stairway to heaven, there were scattered villages. Upon seeing that they could no longer proceed with the horses, Li Jinglong sent them to the village and bought food and drinking water from the villagers. The three were wrapped in thick fur coats and walked along the glacial river to the upstream of the Yellow River. The weather was freezing and the water has turned to ice. Hung Jun suggested that with the true essence of the phoenix flame, they could make use of Yu Zhou's ability to fly and did not need to carry the extra weight, but Li Jinglong insisted on walking on foot to save their mana in case it became necessary to use it later on. We shouldn't be attacked again. Yu Zhou said, "What are you being so careful for? We couldn't be sure of that." Li Jinglong couldn't be bothered to argue with Yu Zhou and just replied casually. Yu Zhou was so bored and could only follow behind them. According to the villagers, the snowstorm Sacred Mountain was the source of the Yellow River, and legends passed down through the ages also said that this is the first dragon vein in the Central Plains and was also known as the Temple of 10,000 Yaos. Zhao Zilong. Li Jinglong held Hung Jun's hand in the snow and asked, calmly, "Do you still remember where you were born? How is it possible?" Yu Zhou tightened his coat and quickened his pace. He said, "I didn't remember much before I was 50 years old." Hung Jun turned to look back at him and said, "How did you meet Xiaoyu in the first place?" Yu Zhou thought about it for a moment and talked about his life as they drudged through the snow. At that time, he was just a carp in the Yellow River. He didn't develop sentience until after many years. When he finally understood things, he had already lived for 50 years. It was strange. Normally, aquatic creatures would grow at an astonishing rate. However, he did not, even after living for a few decades. The years only left a ring-like mark on his scales which he would get annually. Trees and aquatic creatures were the easiest to gauge the age of. Each year they live was engraved in their bodies. After the Carpiao gained intelligence, he wandered around. After a long time, the Carpiao couldn't help but contemplate the meaning of its existence. The Carpiao hoped to cultivate into a human form and then jump over the dragon gate in the hope that one day in the future, he will have a glimpse of heaven. Thus, he began to exert all his efforts until finally, he developed human hands and feet. Li Jinglong. Hung Jun said, "I seem to have heard this part of the story before." Li Jinglong said, "So, you cultivate human hands and feet on your own? So powerful." Yu Zhou obviously didn't want to talk about his past. After all, his hands and feet were not very good looking, but Hung Jun asked and he could only answer truthfully. "That was after I met the monk." Before he could understand how far he had cultivated, he got caught into a fishing net one day. He still remembered that it was a sunny afternoon, and the fisherman's voice rang in his ears. 2 caddies and a half. So, the Carpiao was sent to the market in Chang'an where it was hung for sale. Not long after, it was bought by a restaurant. This restaurant was the predecessor of Yu Dragon Gate. Soon after, Xianzhuan came to the back kitchen of Yu Dragon Gate. Li Jinglong asked, why would the venerable Xianzhuan come to the back kitchen of a restaurant? It was because of his disciple. Yu Zhou explained, he was there to look for someone. That's when the Carpiao saw the monk, and as per his knowledge, monks were against killing, so he immediately asked for his help. Master Xianzhuan was surprised that a carp could speak the human language. He then bought it and raised it in the pond of the Temple of Great Mercy. After the morning bells and evening drums, Buddhist chants resounded therein. When Master Xianzhuan was reciting the sutras, the Carpiao was listening by the side. Later, Master Xianzhuan moved to the Wild Goose Pagoda, and the carp demon was very idle for a while. That is to say, you have lived in Chang'an for decades? Li Jinglong asked. The three of them arrived at the holy mountain as the sky gradually darkened. Hung Jun found a cave and made preparation to stay the night there. Yu Zhou glanced at Li Jinglong, who was holding Hung Jun's hand, and casually said, "I don't want to talk about it anymore." Li Jinglong let go of Hung Jun's hand and gestured for him to boil water. Then he said to Yu Zhou, "In these years that you had been the dagur of the exorcism division." When Yu Zhou heard this, his mood became very complicated and he said, "I know you all look down on me." Li Jinglong hurriedly waved his hand and explained, "Everyone respects you very much." The Carpiao usually saw through many things but did not expose them. After all, he had lived for so many years. It was impossible for him not to understand the ways of the world. However, he was a Yao and he had betrayed Hung Jun. He was afraid that the exorcism department will chase him away, which weakened his resolve. Even now that he had cultivated into a human form, in front of Li Jinglong, he felt as if he was still that lowly Carpiao. He couldn't help but feel anxious. "Did you know?" Yu Zhou said suddenly, "When I fled back to Chang'an that day, I didn't thought that the exorcism department would not open its door for me." Li Jinglong heard about it from Mo Rijin and Lu Su and said, "Everyone wasn't at home then. What could we do?" Yu Zhou looked at Li Jinglong for a long time. Hung Jun felt that the atmosphere had gone a little strange and looked up at Yu Zhou. "Second brother, in all these years, have you really treated me as family?" Yu Zhou asked softly. Hong Jun was about to speak but Li Jinglong raised his hand to stop him. "To be honest," Li Jinglong replied, "no." Yu Zhou thought that Li Jinglong would try to coax him with a few words, but he did not expect that Li Jinglong would simply and crudely tell the truth. "Is it because I betrayed you?" Yu Zhou asked towards Hong Jun. Hong Jun exclaimed, "Zhao Zilong, I said that I forgive you." Yu Zhou suddenly stared stubbornly at Li Jinglong. "That's just a trivial matter." Li Jinglong said lightly, "It's simply because I don't believe in you, since you are not human but a Yaoguai." Hung Jun. "It's not just you." Li Jinglong said, "As long as you are of the Yao tribe, Zhaoyun, Qingxiang, Chongming, Yu Zayun, or the Corpse Ghost King. We are enemies to begin with. Aside from Hung Jun, I cannot completely trust any member of the Yao tribe. This is my duty as the Zenshi of the exorcism department." Hung Jun did not interrupt Li Jinglong. He was very surprised that he would actually hear Li Jinglong said this truth at this time and place. It was quite rare for him to honestly express his stance. After all, Li Jinglong was a person who rarely spoke his mind. Even when he was discussing things with his colleagues, his stance could only be understood and was not specifically expressed. He was also very careful and overprotective of Hung Jun, whom he would avoid to be exposed in too much scheming or shrewdness. At this time though, he could vaguely understand why Li Jinglong would mention the past and talked openly to Yu Zhou. Perhaps it was because of the last artifact that belongs to the Carpiao. Once this last artifact of Akalanatha was secured, Li Jinglong wanted to ensure that the Carpiao would cooperate with everyone. "You don't need to say that, I will help you." Yu Zhou said, "I'm only doing this for Hung Jun though, nothing else. That's the other matter that I want to talk about." Li Jinglong sat with his back to Hung Jun, seeming to separate the two of them. He said calmly, "Hung Jun, can you go find some firewood?" Hung Jun frowned. No matter how stupid he was, he understood that Li Jinglong had something to say to Yu Zhou alone. Although he didn't like what Li Jinglong was doing, he still got up and walked out of the cave. Secondly, Li Jinglong looked directly at Yu Zhou and said, "You like Hung Jun and you like him from the very start." Yu Zhou was instantly flustered. His face reddened as he stammered, I. After Li Jinglong said this, he continued indifferently, "That's why you don't like me and I don't like you either." Yu Zhou calmed down from his initially panicked state. In just a few short breaths he finally managed to say, "That's right. Why is it you? Are you worthy enough of him?" Li Jinglong just smiled and sincerely said, "I'm sorry, Zhao Zilong." Yu Zhou. However, Yu Zhou's eyes slowly turned red. After a long time, he said in a daze, that year, I was caught by Xiaoyu. And he made me go to Taihang Mountains. A bear almost ate me. Li Jinglong didn't interrupt him and only looked at Yu Zhou in silence. Yu Zhou suddenly choked with sobs and said intermittently, "It was Hung Jun who saved my life. He was the son of Mahamayuri and the adopted son of the Phoenix Yao King. He was so bright and beautiful. But he never treated me like an ordinary monster, though he ordered me around. He even gave me my name. He said, 'I believe in you. One day, you will become a dragon. You will live for a long time.'" Li Jinglong said, "He has only one single lifetime. You do not belong to him and he does not belong to you." Yu Zhou stared at Li Jinglong and said, "I know." Li Jinglong frowned slightly and Yu Hu sighed as if he had given up and continued, "From the moment I saw you chasing us to the foot of Mount Gilian, I knew that I didn't stand a chance." Li Jinglong's heart was full of mixed feelings for a while. Then he said in a deep voice, "That's why I risked my life to go after you. Forget it." Yu Zhou patted Li Jinglong on the shoulder, turned around and shouted, "Hong Jun." Hung Jun came back with some firewood. He looked at Yu Zhou and then he looked at Li Jinglong with a hint of reproach in his eyes. Li Jinglong stood up, took the firewood and rekindled the fire. The atmosphere was very strange. No one spoke. Hung Jun glanced at the faces of the two and finally couldn't help but say, "Don't bully him." "I didn't," Li Jinglong said innocently. "He didn't." Yu Zhou supported Li Jinglong and added, "I feel much better now." "Hong Jun." Li Jinglong laughed while Hong Jun said, "What are you laughing at? What did my Yao tribe did to you?" Li Jinglong said, "I am willing to change myself for you." When Hong Jun heard this, he was slightly relieved. He raised his eyes to Li Jinglong and asked, "Really?" "Yes." Li Jinglong didn't avoid Hong Jun's eyes. Instead, there was a smile in his eyes. The wind gradually subsided and the surroundings became silent. Hung Jun didn't say anything anymore. Li Jinglong and Yu Zhou seemed to have reached a strange tacit understanding. Neither of them spoke. Hung Jun couldn't help but venture a guess at what they had talked about. However, when he thought about how Li Jinglong usually sent him away with good intentions, he didn't dare to ask any more. However, Li Jinglong rarely talked openly, so he couldn't help but be curious. "Master Xian Shuang." Hong Jun decided to find something to say. "He is a Buddha." "Yes." Yu Zhou was like a piece of wood that suddenly came alive. He said, "I still remember the day he became a Buddha." "Were you by his side?" Li Jinglong asked a question. Yu Zhou muttered, "Yes, I was the only one by his side." The atmosphere suddenly became natural and warm. Hung Jun felt that while he was away, it seemed Yu Zhou might have untied a certain knot in his heart. "What did he say?" Hong Jun asked. Yu Zhou shook his head and said, "He said that I was sent down by heaven to deliver all living beings from torment." Hong Jun was shocked in an instant. This was an extremely high evaluation and it came from the mouth of Zantan Gong Buddha. "You are the one." Yu Zhou smiled and said, "Our family's Hung Jun, it is, Then he muttered to himself again, "I was born to help you." Li Jinglong asked, had he predicted the calamity that would befall the Tang dynasty? Yu Zhou thought for a while and shook his head. "No, he didn't. I remember that it was at dusk. Before he became a Buddha, he gave me something." "What is it?" Hong Jun hadn't heard of this before. "I don't know." Yu Zhou said, "I thought it was to help my cultivation. So, I just swallowed it." Li Jinglong said, "The Buddha gave you something and you swallowed it?" Yu Zhou said, "Yes." "Is there a problem with that?" Li Jinglong and Hong Jun were speechless. Yu Zhou lifted his legs and rolled up his trousers, revealing his hairy leg. "After that, I cultivated seriously. After meditating for a while, I gained human hands and feet." Li Jinglong. Hong Jun's mouth twitched as he said, "Oh, so that's how it is." Yu Zhou continued, "After that, I was set free and entered the Jing River. I wanted to find a place to cultivate some more, but then Xiaoyu found me and then, I looked for you." Hong Jun said, "The Kun God said that you have to accumulate merits to cultivate a human form. He got enough." Li Jinglong said, "During the battle outside Hang Pass, Zhao Zilong saved more than tens of thousands of people." Hong Jun thought so, too. Later after that, Lu Su recounted how the Carpiao had indeed saved the lives of many people. If it wasn't for him, who knew how many more soldiers would have died on that battlefield? "But my cultivation is not enough." Yu Zhou pondered for a moment and then said, "After I help you defeat Yuan Kun and Mara, I have to find a place to properly cultivate." Hong Jun looked at Yu Zhou, but Yu Zhou avoided his eyes. Li Jinglong felt that Yu Zhou finally figured out things that night. "Congratulations." Li Jinglong smiled. Hong Jun said, "Maybe I won't be able to see you turn into a dragon before my life is over." When Hong Jun said this, Yu Zhou almost burst into tears, but Hong Jun smiled and comforted him, "But you have already carried me to soar through the sky, so you have fulfilled your promise." At that moment, Yu Zhou began to gasp for breath. Li Jinglong pretended to be nonchalant about it, but actually, his heart was in his throat. He was afraid that Yu Zhou would say something ambiguous to Hong Jun and things would get weird again. "Zhao Zilong." Hong Jun sensed that he was not acting normally. However, Yu Zhou gradually calmed himself down. "Yes." Yu Zhou forced a smile and muttered to himself, "That is the greatest wish of my life." Li Jinglong finally let out a sigh of relief. His palms were sweaty. It wasn't that he didn't believe in Hong Jun, but Li Jinglong had been in tenterhooks ever since he met this fish again. He was afraid that this fish would really turn into a dragon one day and kidnap Hong Jun. He was even more afraid that one day, Hong Jun would find everything to be unbearable and follow the Carpiao to live in seclusion in some mountains where he wouldn't be able to find them again. In fact, since the first time he met Hong Jun, this strong sense of insecurity never really let up. On one hand, he had to be on guard against Chongming. Although he was nominally an adoptive father, he had raised Hong Jun since he was young. He later felt that Qing Xiang was also a little dangerous, but gradually excluded him. Then another one came. Ashinakayan was an easygoing person. Fortunately, Hong Jun didn't like him that way. But the most troublesome was this Carpiao. He had known Hong Jun earlier than him and had taken care of him wholeheartedly. Hong Jun was oblivious and only treated him like a family member. If the Carpiao turned into a handsome young man, he would be an extremely strong competition. Therefore, when Yu Zhou ran away with Hong Jun, it was really the most soul-stirring moment in Li Jinglong's life. It was a life or death situation, so no matter what, he had to chase after Hong Jun. However, this time, the Carpiao finally admitted defeat. Li Jinglong felt more tired than when after he had been fighting in huge a battle. End chapter. Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 208. Temple of 10,000 Yao. That night, Yu Zhou fell asleep while sitting and leaning against the wall. Li Jinglong hugged Hong Jun as they slept in the innermost part of the cave. Hong Jun used his fingers to gently poke Li Jinglong's nipple through his robes. "Stop playing." Li Jinglong's breath quickened up as he whispered in his ear, "It's already so hard that it's about to explode." Hong Jun looked up at him and said, "There is a lamp in here." Li Jinglong grabbed Hong Jun's hand. Yu Zhou was nearby, so he really couldn't do anything with Hong Jun right now. Otherwise, that would be bullying Yu Zhou too much and it might drive Yu Zhou insane. "It only lights up for you," Li Jinglong said softly. "It lights up for everyone in the divine land," Hong Jun said softly, "and guides them in the darkness." Li Jinglong looked down at Hong Jun in his arms, but Hong Jun did not raise his head and only muttered to himself, "But it is not lit for the Yao tribe. The heart lamp originates from human and it only shines on human. How can it be considered everyone?" Li Jinglong was speechless. Hong Jun closed his eyes and fell asleep, but that sentence was like a thunderbolt that flashed through Li Jinglong's mind, shattering the rock-solid mountain range. His heart beat violently as countless memories flashed through his mind until it finally settled in this small cave. Hong Jun's absent-mindedly spoken words were a like blow to his head, making him tremble. The snow stopped early the morning. In the second month of the second year of the Zheng era, the sun shone on the snowstorm sacred mountain, creating a spectacle of golden sunshine. Li Jinglong had already searched for the 4 artifacts in succession, so he was familiar on how this thing went. When he climbed up the sacred mountain, he first looked for the entrance to the mountain. This mountain thawed for only 2 months every year, and there was a waterfall on the mountain. Hong Jun suddenly remembers the solitary peak of Emorigin's hometown. Should we take a look behind the waterfall? Hong Jun asked. Do you have any impressions of this place? Li Jinglong asked Yuzhou. A little, it seems. Yuzhou replied. With success closed at hand, Li Jinglong couldn't help getting nervous. But then again, I'm not so sure, Yuzhou said. Second brother, do you think there will be carps in a place like this? Li Jinglong was suddenly enlightened as he suddenly realized a very serious matter. If the Zoage Basin was located on a plateau, it was reasonable to assume that even in the middle of summer, the water temperature here was extremely low. Most of the aquatic creatures living here would mostly be alpine cold water fish species. There should be no carp anywhere here. Let's take a look first, Li Jinglong daringly said. Afterwards, he climbed up the ice wall and entered the waterfall. Behind the waterfall was a vast space. He took out the sword of wisdom and pointed it towards the depths of the space. This time, the sword of wisdom did not lit up. We may have come to the wrong place. Li Jinglong said, if we didn't come to the wrong place, then we must have brought the wrong person. My luck is really. Hong Jun bent down and carefully groped his way forward. Yuzhou said, you know you can fly, right? Oh right? Hong Jun seemed to always forget the fact that he could fly now. He immediately picked up Li Jinglong and flew in with Yuzhou. They flew carefully this time, wary of encountering any big creatures. Wait. Li Jinglong said suddenly in the darkness, look into the direction of your left side. Hey, Hong Jun. Don't let go. I will fall down. Hong Jun was about to stretch out his left hand to judge the direction. When he heard Li Jinglong's voice, he immediately laughed. Yuzhou asked, here. Rather than saying that this was a cave in a sacred mountain, it was more of an abyss. There was a bottomless cliff at the bottom and there were only mountain walls on all sides. Li Jinglong ordered, come closer. Li Jinglong's eyesight and hearing were both outstanding. Hong Jun struggled to identify it for a long time before he found a faint light on the cave wall. Li Jinglong raised his hand and the heart lamp illuminated a small part of the wall of the cave. Hong Jun exclaimed when he saw strange runes engraved on it. This was a seal and there was a thick layer of ice outside of the seal. There might be some monsters inside. Li Jinglong whispered, be careful. Last time when they had encountered the boss snake, they fortunately received external help. This time they couldn't afford to wait for someone to rescue them, so they must be extra careful. Yuzhou cleaned the ice and revealed the seal's pattern. He asked in surprise, what is this? The seal was composed of 9 symbols with a vertical rectangular hole in the center. Li Jinglong said in a deep voice, this is the 9 syllables mantra. That's not right. This was the first time that Hong Jun encountered such a seal. He muttered, weren't there only earth vein arrays and artifacts before? While being carried by Hong Jun, Li Jinglong pulled out the sword of wisdom and stared at the 9 syllables mantra. Then he slowly inserted the sword into the rectangular hole in the center. Hong Jun. The sword of wisdom fitted perfectly as it was inserted deeply up to its hilt, leaving on the sword guard. Immediately afterwards, the 9 syllables mantra light up one by one, flashing in turns. The seal disappeared and a gate opened, revealing a deep and long tunnel behind it. It's open! Hung Jun exclaimed in surprise. He entered the tunnel with Li Jinglong and Yu Zhou. The tunnel had obviously been not repaired for many years. The deepest part of the tunnel shone with golden light. The light that they were seeing at that moment was the golden light reflected through the seal's keyhole. The golden light pulsed in the darkness in a frequency, then the light of the sword of wisdom would follow and this flickering pattern would continue in this flow. Li Jinglong clenched Hung Jun's hand, who then quickened his pace. After leaving the tunnel, Yu Zhou suddenly exclaimed in surprise. Hong Jun and Li Jinglong were also shocked. Before entering, they had their speculations on the place where the last artifact was sealed. As per the previous 5 artifacts, it should be a dark place where there would be an array powered by an earth vein and the golden arrows were supposed to be embedded at the center of it. However, the scene in front of them completely overturned their understanding of things. There was no earth vein array. This is a grand temple. On the stone walls on all sides of the temple, there were huge shrines like the 1000 Buddha cave. From the upper and lower part, there were more than 10,000 shrines. The shrines were filled with lifelike statues of Yaoguai. In the center of the temple, there were 2 statues. One looked down at the open space in front of the temple. It was a figure of the 6-armed Akalanatha. 5 of Akalanatha's 6 arms were empty and the only hand holding a weapon was where the golden arrow was. Opposite to the statue of Akalanatha was the statue of Dipankara. Yu Zhou opened his mouth and muttered heavens. The moment the 3 entered the temple, the candles in all of the Yaoguai shrines lit up one after another in all directions, illuminating the temple like a small universe. The place where the sky and earth were in a loop, Akalanatha's power shook the heavens and the earth. The light of the eternally burning lamp shone in all directions. The 1000 Yaoguai wanted to escape but they could not break free from the combined powers of Akalanatha and the burning lamp. In front of Akalanatha and Dipankara, there was a small shrine. On its altar was a lifelike bird spreading its wings. It was the Mahamayuri. Jinlong, look! Hong Jun urged. Li Jinglong followed the direction that Hung Jun was pointing out and saw that outside of the temple of 10,000 Yao, the lights were flickering. Through the lampstand, they formed intersecting shadows in the temple. It was as if countless shadows of Buddha had appeared. There was a faded mural on the dome. It was depicting images of flying immortals. The ground around the altar was divided into 6 huge floor tiles with 6 lines painted on each tile. Then, on the outer periphery of the statue of Akalanatha and Dipankara, there were intersecting circles with images of ghosts painted on them. 3 realms, the 6 Dao, celestial immortals, gods, Buddhas, 10,000 Yao, Li Jinglong stated seriously. Around the altar, like a chessboard of heaven and earth, there was a dragon and a phoenix, while in front of the altar, a peculiar earth vein fountain appeared. The fountain was filled with earth vein energy. On the pedestal, there were the 5 symbols which indicated the location of the other 5 artifacts of Akalanatha. The temple of 10,000 Yao, Hung Jun murmured. There's really such a place? Li Jinglong asked in surprise. Hong Jun explained, Chongming mentioned it when I was very young but even he has never been here and just heard about it. The temple was built even before the start of the human civilization. At that time, the Shang and the Zhou dynasties were not enshrined yet and the Yellow Emperor's battle for the throne had not yet started. Going back further, it was even as old as the heavens and earth. There should be no sealed Yaoguai here. Li Jinglong said. Since this a temple dedicated to Akalanatha and Dipankara. The 3 of them heaved a sigh of relief. Li Jinglong looked at the symbol in front of the earth vein fountain carefully and said to himself, under the dragon subduing tower was the Qiao, under the Shiwei Gufeng was the nightmare taper, in the Tianluo mountain was the boss snake, under the Longmen mountain was the Gunao of wine, lust, greed, and wrath. I wonder what was sealed in the ancient water channel of Lake Poyang. I was the one sealed in the ancient water channel. A voice said coldly. The 3 were shocked as they immediately turned their heads. Yuan Kun's black robe fluttered as he walked slowly along the passageway. I've been waiting for a long time. Yuan Kun raised his head and seemed to be sizing up this magnificent and ancient temple with his eyes covered in black cloth. Kun God. Hong Jun said in surprise, why are you? Li Jinglong's thought raced. He walked over slightly and stood in front of Hong Jun. At this moment, Yuan Kun's body was emitting an extremely strong aura which caused Yu Zhou's heart to tremble in fear as he slowly took some steps back. So, this is what the temple of 10,000 Yao is like, Yuan Kun murmured. Hong Jun, Li Jinglong, and Yu Zhou watched Yuan Kun with vigilance. At this moment, Hong Jun had vaguely felt danger emanating from the Kun god. It was impossible for Yuan Kun not to have known that Qing Xiang sent someone to assassinate him. It was a fact that Qing Xiang and Yuan Kun had been close friends for the longest time. It was obvious that the two of them were in cahoots. Hong Jun wanted to question the Kun god, but Li Jinglong stopped him with a look. Why does the temple of 10,000 Yao exists? Li Jinglong pretended to be indifferent and did not mention anything about the Yao tribe. Instead, he regarded Yuan Kun normally as if he was someone on their side. He stood in front of the altar and turned to look at the statues of Akalanatha and Dipankara. Yuan Kun replied, if we traced back the story, it was quite ancient. At the beginning of ancient times, Mara descended into the world, corrupting the human world with 3,000 nightmares, the pain of separation of life and death, and endless desires, leading the way for the Yao tribe to occupy the divine land. Hong Jun gazed quietly at Yuan Kun. It was so quiet within the temple that one could hear a pin drop, but it was filled with tension. Yuan Kun walked past the fountain of earth veins, his face was pale and his skin looked wan and sickly. His slender and pale fingers swept across the pedestal beside the fountain and stroked the runes. Then he walked towards the statue of Dipankara and raised his head. Later, Akalanatha and Dipankara worked together to destroy the devil seed and sealed those of us who had followed Mara in the past, Yuan Kun explained leisurely. Akalanatha released 5 of his artifacts to seal the 5 of us in different places throughout the divine land. Compared to you, Li Jinglong smiled coolly and continued, whether it was the gunao of wine, lust, greed, and wrath or the nightmare taper, the cultivation bases were too incomparable. But of course, in the past when I was by Mara's side, I also played the role of a strategist. Yuan Kun turned his head and seemed to cast a glance at Li Jinglong from under the black cloth. At the end, he walked towards the statue of Akalanatha. The three became alarmed only for Yuan Kun to say lightly, there's no need to be nervous. I won't start attacking you now. Why? Hong Jun asked suddenly. Yuan Kun stood in front of the altar and pressed one hand in front of it, as if in deep contemplation. I thought you were on the side of the Yejin palace. Hong Jun asked again. Li Jinglong wanted to stop him again, but on second thoughts, he simply let Hong Jun voice his questions. Do you think like that because I'm the one who gave you the heart lamp? Yuan Kun said exquisitely. Xiao Hong Jun, don't you think it's because I was guiding you from the beginning? Hong Jun's breathing sound was very distinct in this silent temple while Yuan Kun was like a pale ghost. He turned his head slightly and a strange smile appeared in the corner of his mouth. I did change your destiny for you. Yuan Kun said, since the moment the heart lamp was intercepted, it was doomed. It is impossible for the same person to inherit the 6 artifacts of Akalanatha. Li Jinglong. As if something in his heart broke, Hong Jun finally understood why Qing Xiang gave him the heart lamp on that day. You have chosen Jinglong a long time ago. Hong Jun was shocked. Countless chaotic truths were finally revealed at this moment. The moment Li Jinglong broke the heart lamp, the power of Dipankara chose him and entered his body. That's right. Yuan Kun said slowly, 10 years ago, Akalanatha chose Li Jinglong to be the inheritor of the 6 artifacts. After he obtained the 6 artifacts, he was supposed to shoot the golden arrow into your chest and destroy the devil seed. But thanks to your joint efforts, destiny has been changed. After the heart lamp was misled and entered his 3 Hun and 7 Po, Li Jinglong returned to the past under my guidance and changed the cause and effect. Once the new cycle of cause and effect forms a completed close loop, the trajectory of history will be completely finalized. Li Jinglong said naturally, speaking of which, you have my gratitude, Kun God. You don't have to thank me, Yuan Kun replied. Everyone just took what they needed. You had voluntarily gave up the 6 artifacts and saved the life of your lover, resulting in us having one less competitor. Li Jinglong muttered, however, do you think that just because I lost the right to inherit the power of Akalanatha that I won't be able to do anything against Mara? No, Yuan Kun laughed instead and replied, I never had this plan. After all, for us, whether it's Xiaoyu and Lushan or Hung Jun himself, we don't want to see Mara appear in this world again. After all, once Mara appeared again, the consequences would be very difficult to deal with. At least on this point, our stances are exactly the same. What I was hoping for was for the Yao tribe to once again rule the divine land, as I don't want them to live in darkness like before. Hung Jun asked in trembling, so, what were you intending to do? Go to war. Yuan Kun said, lead the Yao tribe and become the masters of the divine land. Hung Jun, on behalf of the Yao tribe, I will give you a last chance to choose. You are the son of Kong Xian and should be on our side. Yuan Kun murmured, Qing Xiang had high hopes for you. From the moment Li Jinglong chose to give up the 6 artifacts, the future became destined to be rewritten. Hung Jun, let's go. In a daze, Hung Jun turned his head to look at Li Jinglong and then he looked Yuan Kun. If you have seen the future, Hung Jun frowned slightly as he asked, then no matter what choice I made, it shouldn't affect the outcome. So, why did you have to come here and ask me again? Li Jinglong instantly cheered in his heart. Hung Jun had completely hit the nail on the head and pierced through the layers of barrier to get to the core essence of the matter. However, Yuan Kun simply smirked and said, you have to understand that all of this makes sense. So, you already knew my answer. Hung Jun took out the pentacolor sacred knives. You knew that I would reject you. That's right, Yuan Kun coldly spat out the words. Why don't you guess what will happen next? Wait. Li Jinglong suddenly stretched out his hand and pressed down the knife in Hung Jun's hand. He stared at Yuan Kun and said, allow me to say something, Kun God. I am quite curious about your ability to predict the future. Do you also know what I am going to do next? End chapter. Tianbao Fu Yao Lu. Chapter 209. Raging Sea. Li Jinglong had long envisioned a confrontation with Yuan Kun a long time ago. It was as early as when Qiu Yangxi had accidentally pointed it out for the first time until the latest attack against Hung Jun. Once he got confirmation that it was orchestrated by Qing Xiang and taking into consideration the relationship between Qing Xiang and Yuan Kun, the instigator behind the scene must be the Yao King known as the Seeing Through Heaven's Secrets. Initiating a fight with an opponent who knew what will happen in the future, whether if it was one-on-one or a group attack, felt quite tricky. There was also the paradoxical assumption that since the enemy knew the outcome of the fight, if they were destined to lose then there was no need to fight in the first place. After all, who would want to fight a losing battle? Yuan Kun followed them to this temple. Presumably as long as he attacked, the 3 of them would lose no matter what they did. In other words, they can now concede defeat. You will admit defeat, Yuan Kun replied indifferently to Li Jinglong. Hong Jun suddenly looked at Li Jinglong, his brows full of doubts. Li Jinglong wanted this answer and raised his eyebrows again, and then what? After admitting defeat, you will let this one go to get the golden arrows and join forces with Hung Jun to attack me, Yuan Kun replied as he pointed to Yu Zhou. Li Jinglong put on a cunning and malicious smile as he said, what if I neither admit defeat nor attack you? Won't you be wrong? Yuan Kun suddenly fell silent as Li Jinglong observed Yuan Kun's face and muttered, I think, I understand. Yuan Kun was caught off guard by Li Jinglong's words. He didn't even think that he would inadvertently reveal the truth behind the seeing through heaven's secrets. Li Jinglong immediately judged from these few sentences that the future that Yuan Kun saw was not fixed but a general direction of the future full of chaotic changing details. In other words, Yuan Kun may be able to foresee the success or failure of this battle, but he was unable to foresee how it would exactly happen. What you see is not the real future. Li Jinglong murmured, it was only the possibilities of the future. Am I right, Kun God? At least right now, you are wrong. As he spoke, he drew out the sword of wisdom and pointed it to Yuan Kun. Yuan Kun said coldly, it doesn't matter anymore. At least, I can see your death, Li Jinglong. Do you want to know how you died? Hong Jun was suddenly startled, but Li Jinglong only curled his lips and said, tell me, how did I die? When two armies fight, the commander-in-chief always dies because he talks too much, Yuan Kun said in a low voice. Immediately after, he calmly took a step back. Li Jinglong and Hong Jun were closely watching Yuan Kun's movements, anticipating his attack. In that instant, the two moved at the same time. The moment Yuan Kun retreated, he flipped up into the air and then he transformed into a mercury-like form. He rapidly changed and expanded until he turned into a giant fish that was soaring in the sky. Li Jinglong shouted, Zhao Zilong, take the golden arrows. Hong Jun trapped it with the pentacolor sacred knives. Then he rushed with Hong Jun to take advantage of the fact that Giant Kun was still in the middle of its transformation to beat it back. Hong Jun shook away the pentacolor sacred knives and held a glaive. Then he rushed forward with Li Jinglong at the same time. Li Jinglong activated the heart lamp and pushed it to its strongest state. The heart lamp was like the blazing sun in the temple. At this moment, the lamps behind the two seemed to have sensed it and started to emit a strong light. The lights of Buddha in all directions inside the temple began to resonate at the same time, making the light of Li Jinglong's heart lamp rose instantly, turning into a tangible flame that lingered in this small space. The giant Kun was scorched by the white flame during its transformation and it roared as it retreated. When Hong Jun spread his hands, the pentacolor sacred knives spread out in all direction, trapping the Kun god in an instant as it formed a cage made of light. Yuan Kun was in the middle of his transformation, which was like a few short breaths away from crossing a river. Li Jinglong happened to take advantage of this short moment. Countless white flames were like blazing whips that were glowing from Li Jinglong's hands, looking like long snakes slithering about. In an instant, thousands of them flew out and wrapped around the Kun god who had yet to finish his transformation. Hong Jun's pentacolor sacred light spread out and turned into a barrier, completely trapping Yuan Kun. Yuan Kun had no choice but to retreat. With a loud bang, he crashed into the entrance of the passage. The walls of the cave trembled and rocks fell off from above with a rumble. Yu Zhou took the opportunity to turn around and rushed towards the statue of Akalanatha. He reached out to grab the golden arrows. Upon doing so, Akalanatha's entire body erupted with a strong golden light that swept over Yu Zhou. Yu Zhou's entire body was enveloped by a golden flame, making him immediately cried out in pain. Hong Jun, Qiu Yangxi, and Amorigin all came into contact with this golden flame when they retrieved their artifacts. Yu Zhou wasn't able to withdraw his hands and therefore could only grit his teeth as Li Jinglong shouted, "Hang on!" The light in the center of Li Jinglong's hand kept burning the giant Kun, interrupting Yuan Kun's transformation process. Yuan Kun tried to break free from Li Jinglong several times, but the heart lamp always caught up to him like a tarsal maggot, crazily attacking him. Yuan Kun immediately let out a series of earth-shattering roars. He crashed into the stone walls, but he still could not break free from the combined entrapment of the pentacolor sacred light and the heart lamp. "Are you not done yet?" Li Jinglong shouted angrily. Yu Zhou had managed to grab the golden arrow, but he couldn't remove it even after exerting all his strengths. Meanwhile, the Kun god crashed into the inner walls of the temple, making the Yaoguai statues to collapse one after another with a loud bang. The Kun god was like a dehydrated, dying fish trapped in a fishing net, struggling to break free from its restraint. Li Jinglong gritted his teeth and released another burst from the heart lamp. His entire body became scalding hot. He was waiting for the opportunity when the Kun god underestimated his enemy. He intended to severely injure him here and kept him in this place. The only variable in this plan was that he was afraid that Hung Jun might not be able to bear it and let the Kun god go. Unexpectedly, Hung Jun became even more ruthless than Li Jinglong. Using the light cage made by the pentacolor sacred light, he directly slammed him against the wall and the ground. Li Jinglong shouted, "No matter what, don't it let go." At the beginning, the giant Kun had a card up its sleeves, but now he became scared. He wanted to catch all three of them in one fell swoop, but now, he was the one who was trapped by the pentacolor sacred light and couldn't make any move. It was a fact that Yuan Kun's strength lay in the fact that he could see the future. Just like how under the Longmen Mountain, Li Jinglong managed to defeat the Gunao of wine, lust, greed, and wrath due to his guidance. Without this power, he was nothing but a huge Yaoguai. Yuan Kun did not possess martial arts skill like the Corpse Ghost King, nor did he have claws like Qing Xiang. After being trapped halfway through his transformation, he really couldn't do anything against Li Jinglong and Hung Jun. Gradually, he began to panic and started to struggle more intensely. "Hong Jun!" Kun God roared, "Are you really going to kill me?" Li Jinglong watched with rapt attention as the heart lamp continued to burn the mercury-like creature. Whenever the Kun God tried to gather its strength, Li Jinglong also gathered his strength and gave it a heavy blow. The Kun God tried to break from the entrapment of the pentacolor sacred light again and again, but Li Jinglong continued to suppress him. "Hong Jun!" Yu Zhou called out weakly. Hong Jun suddenly turned his head and saw that Yu Zhou had grabbed the golden arrow, but his whole body was continuously burning within the golden fire. Hung Jun anxiously shouted, "Jinglong!" In a glance, Li Jinglong's mind instantly turned. He had made countless calculations in his mind. This didn't make sense. This isn't what happened to either Hung Jun or Chu Yangxi when they retrieved their artifact. Is it because of his identity as a Yaoguai? But then, Hung Jun was also of the Yao tribe. Who was destined to have this artifact? Lu Su? Ashinis Yang? No. I have to save Yu Zhou first. Li Jinglong was caught in an extremely difficult choice. On one hand, as long as he maintained the spell and the pentacolor sacred light, he could completely suppress the Kun God. On the other hand, Yu Zhou would definitely be burned to death by the golden fire. What should I do? Thoughts flashed through his mind one after another, making it seem as if time lasted for a long while, though it was only a span of a short moment. In the end, Li Jinglong could only mutter to himself, "My luck is really. I'll save him. You hold on." Li Jinglong yelled angrily and immediately pulled back. The power of the heart lamp was instantly withdrawn and Hung Jun hurriedly strengthened the pentacolor sacred light. However, what the Kun God feared the most was the power of the heart lamp, because it was the heart lamp that was restraining his transformation. The next moment that the heart lamp was withdrawn, the Kun God's mercury-like body instantly grew larger. "You are done!" Yuan Kun roared with anger. Hong Jun gritted his teeth and tried his best to form the phoenix sigil behind him. However, the giant Kun's transformation started to finalize as soon as the pressure on it was lessened. It opened its mouth and snarled. It was as if the turbulent North Sea was spewing out of its mouth. Li Jinglong flew to the front of Yu Zhou, whose whole body was completely engulfed by Akalanatha's golden light. Flames shot out of his mouth and eyes. He was obviously in great pain. The heart lamp activated in Li Jinglong's hand. He pressed his hand on Yu Zhou's back in order to help him. With a loud boom, the white light seemed to split the sky and earth and penetrated through to his will. In the white light, he saw two people standing in front of him, one on his left and the other to the right. The person on the left was wearing gold armor, while the person on the right was wearing silver armor. "Sword of Wisdom." "What?" Li Jinglong shouted. At that same time, in the mouth of the giant Kun, the fury of the raging North Sea gushed out from the giant Kun's mouth and collapsed the sky. Hung Jun only felt that all the sounds were far away. Although the pentacolor divine light could resist the water flow, it could not resist the endless waves of the raging North Sea. Those huge waves that could topple mountains and overturn the land surged towards him, and in an instant, the pentacolor sacred light was pushed away. In the blink of an eye, the cold sea filled the entire cave. The surroundings suddenly became quiet as Hung Jun's ears, mouth, and nose became filled with seawater without any warning. His mind went blank as the whole temple turned into a sealed deep underwater hole. In an instant, the giant Kun had destroyed more than half of the cave. Blue light burst out of its mouth and it bit down on Hung Jun's head. Hung Jun was caught off guard when he leaned back. He lost consciousness. Yu Zhou, who was behind him, turned into a fish. He then rushed over and bit Hung Jun's shoulder in an effort to wrestle him free. The cave became very quiet with only the sound of bubbles could be heard. Hung Jun was not very skilled in swimming and his lungs became full of seawater as he painfully struggled. Yu Zhou immediately transformed into a human and hugged Hung Jun from behind. He pulled his hand, pushed his neck and dragged him to raise his hand and paddled. Li Jinglong sank into the water. His whole body was glowing with a golden light and he was also unconscious. On the Zoage Basin in the snowstorm sacred mountain, the red sun rises early over vast and boundless snowy plains. With a soft sound, the ice layer collapsed and the waterfall broke. A strong blast of chi flew out diagonally, like a flying knife cutting through paper, and disappeared without a trace. Immediately afterwards, the whole mountain was cut into two parts from the middle, with the upper half of the mountain fell off diagonally. With another sound, it triggered a large-scale avalanche and the sea surged out. A giant Kun rises into the sky and drew an arc of light under the dazzling sunlight. Hong Jun! Yu Zhou shouted. Hong Jun was lying on the ground, completely unconscious. The pentacolor sacred light had consumed almost all of his strength and the blast of chi from the pentacolor sacred knife had used up all of his mana. The mountain broke and the sea water rushed wildly. It carried him towards the foot of the mountain. The giant Kun turned around in the air, hoping to pounce towards Hung Jun, while Yu Zhou ran wildly and rushed towards Hung Jun. The giant Kun roared and plunged into the snow. Suddenly, from the side of the broken mountain peak, a golden light flew and hit the side of the giant Kun. Yuan Kun's roar was terrifying. Blue blood spewed out of his left eye at once, and spurted into the distance when he turned his head. Li Jinglong drew his bow and put an arrow in it. He then raised his hand to call back the golden light that was spinning in the air, and thus he put the golden arrow on the bowstring, drew the bow and released the arrow. The second arrow came out. As soon as the golden arrow left the bowstring, it turned into an overwhelming storm of golden light, soaring up to the sky and slamming toward the earth. Each arrow was like a falling star dragging a golden light. Yu Zhou immediately dove into the snow and covered his head to dodge. The giant Kun rose into the air. Under the violent bombardment of the dense golden arrows, blood burst out of the Kun's body and spilled across the ground. Li Jinglong screamed again, and raised his hand again. The array of golden light arrows flew back once again to Li Jinglong's hand like a shooting star, dragging flames behind them. At the next moment, Li Jinglong turned around, pulling the third arrow back. The giant Kun twisted his body, fluttered his wings, but instead of soaring into the sky, it faced Li Jinglong head on and rose in a strange posture. At that moment, Li Jinglong's hand pulling the bowstring could not stop shaking. That was because between the giant Kun's sharp teeth was the unconscious figure of Hung Jun. In this short moment, Li Jinglong couldn't release the arrow. He was afraid that the giant Kun would use Hung Jun's body to block the golden arrow. However, within that moment of hesitation, the giant Kun flapped its 6 wings, turned around to rush towards sky and disappeared within the clouds. Li Jinglong slid down the mountain while Yu Zhou drilled himself out of the snow and looked up at the sky. "Go after it!" Li Jinglong shouted. The silver longfish took Li Jinglong into the sky and rose into the clouds. The frigid wind was biting cold and the giant Kun disappeared without a trace. Li Jinglong pressed down on the silver fish and shouted, Go down and follow the trail of its blood stains. You must find it. Yu Zhou had no choice but to dive down from within the clouds and saw that the white snow of the mountain ridge was full of Yuan Kun's blood stains. Li Jinglong followed the bloody trail for a long time. However, when they passed through several black stone mountains, the blood stain was no longer as visible on the black rocks. Li Jinglong said, "It couldn't have gone far." But Yu Zhou's flying gets slower and slower. Li Jinglong was about to urge him, but unexpectedly, Yu Zhou dropped down headfirst towards the snow. His whole body flashed and transformed into his human form. His skin was burned until it was cracked and bleeding. His body was covered with wounds and he was unconscious. Zhao Zilong. Li Jinglong hurriedly lifted him up. Yu Zhou was burned by the golden flame of the sacred arrows in the temple. His mana was exhausted and could no longer support himself. Li Jinglong looked at the sky, his brows were deeply knitted. He let out a long breath out of helplessness and anxiousness. He had no choice but to carry the human form of Yu Zhou and staggered towards a place where they could take shelter from the winds. *******. Hong Jun felt that he was flying in the sky. This scene seemed to be very familiar. A long time ago, a baby in a bumpy swaddling cloth. A giant bird spreading its wings, the waves of sunlight rolling in from the east. It was also at the moment of dawn after a long night of darkness that a golden-winged giant peng flew to the peak of Taihang Mountain with the unconscious Kong Shuang wrapped in a cloth bag. Hong Jun opened his eyes slightly. A blood-red color reflected in his eyes. The sun was setting in the west. It fell to the end of scorched earth. The scorched earth was silent. It had taken him to the end of the mountains where the sun rose. It had also taken him to the plains through dusk until the darkness of the night. With a muffled sound, Hong Jun fell to the ground. The giant golden-winged pen transformed into Qing Xiang's body and walked past him. He went straight to the center of the collapsed Great Hall, wherein Lushan's throne used to be. "Take him away and lock him up," Qing Xiang's voice said. Hong Jun's vision was blurry. He felt that there were people on both his sides shackling him and then, dragged him down the hall. Yuan Kun's left eye was bleeding. Blood flowed continuously along the side of his pale face. He staggered a step forward. Qing Xiang only looked at him quietly and never came up to assist him. Yuan Kun's body was covered in wounds, but the blood on them had dried up already. "Are you trying to kill him?" Qing Xiang asked in disbelief. Yuan Kun did not answer. Qing Xiang suddenly roared, "Get out of here!" The aura of the golden-winged giant Peng swept through the entire ruined hall. Its intensity pushed Yuan Kun away until he crashed into a pillar. End chapter.